China's global automotive expansion is moving at an unprecedented speed. But as companies transition from being simple product exporters to true global operators, they're entering deep water and discovering a whole new class of critical, high-impact risks. In this briefing, we're going to dissect these emerging threats and outline the strategic questions that leadership must now confront. We'll begin with the conclusion first. Let's cut straight to the four most urgent risks that demand immediate attention from the C-suite. These four areas represent immediate, high-impact threats. We're talking about consequences that range from massive multi-million-dollar fines to a complete brand collapse in a key market. Now, these risks didn't just appear out of nowhere. They're a direct result of the industry's explosive, almost dizzying growth. Let's look at the data to see how we got here. Right. This is where we quantify that explosion in exports. It's the sheer velocity that has allowed corporate governance to lag behind, creating the perfect conditions for the complex operational risks we're seeing today. If we rewind to just 2020, China's total auto exports were just over 1 million vehicles. A respectable figure for sure, but not yet a globally dominant one. But then, look at this. By 2023, that number had surged by nearly 400%. Catapulting China to become the world's #1 auto exporter. And the trajectory continues upward. Projections for 2024 are already exceeding 6.4 million units. This pace, this incredible speed, has fundamentally outstripped the development of the internal guardrails, the compliance, governance, and risk management systems needed to operate safely at this scale. You can see the evolution of the strategy right here. It's moved from simple trade to deep, localized manufacturing. And that shift, from merely selling to a market to actually operating within the market, is precisely why these new kinds of risks, like labor laws and data compliance, have moved from being a peripheral concern to the absolute core of strategic planning. Okay, to make these risks less abstract and more concrete, we're going to analyze 3 recent case studies. Each one serves as a critical warning about the very real consequences of getting this wrong. Our first case brings us to Brazil and BYD's factory construction project. This is a textbook example of how failing to manage your contractor's compliance can lead to severe legal and reputational damage. Following a raid, Brazilian authorities found workers living in what they officially designated as degrading conditions. This led to a complete project shutdown and, even more seriously, criminal allegations of human trafficking. That quote you see on the screen is not from a newspaper. It's from the government prosecutor's office. The lessons here are crystal clear. First, your contractor is not a legal shield. The principal company, the brand name on the project, bears the full responsibility. Second, public relations must be handled locally. Blaming foreign forces from headquarters for a domestic legal issue is a disastrous move that only makes things worse. Next, let's head to Australia, where we have the case of 5 Chinese auto brands. This one really demonstrates how a standard business model that works perfectly well at home can become a massive antitrust liability when you deploy it in a different regulatory environment. So, the core allegation here is a violation of what are known as right-to-repair laws. By restricting access to repair data and tools, these companies effectively created a service monopoly for their own authorized dealers. Now, that's a common model in China, but in a market like Australia, it can expose you to crippling antitrust fines. This proves that you simply cannot copy and paste a domestic after-sales strategy into a global market. It has to be re-engineered from the ground up to comply with local regulations, shifting from a closed-loop system to an open, competitive ecosystem. And critically, you have to look at your internal incentives. If you only reward sales, you are practically guaranteeing that compliance will be ignored. Our final case study looks at Great Wall Motors' abrupt closure of its European headquarters in Munich. This isn't a story about external market failure. It's a story of internal organizational dysfunction. Now, while pending tariffs were certainly a factor, digging into the analysis reveals a deeper internal root cause. There was a severe cultural mismatch between the management style from headquarters and the expectations of the European team. This led to high turnover, organizational paralysis, and ultimately an inability to execute strategy. This case brilliantly illustrates that so-called soft power, like the ability to integrate culturally and empower local teams, is actually a hard requirement for sustainable global operations. The key takeaway: an unhealthy organization is fragile. It cannot withstand external pressure. So we've looked at these individual lessons. Now let's synthesize them into a risk framework. This will allow us to systematically assess and prioritize the entire spectrum of global operational threats. The framework we'll use is a standard risk matrix. It's a very simple but powerful tool. We're assessing everything along two axes: the probability of it happening and the potential impact if it does. The strategic focus, of course, has to be on that high probability, high impact quadrant. And here it is. This matrix clearly identifies 5 red zone risks. Notice that regulatory issues and data compliance are not only severe in their impact, but also highly probable. Labor, supply chain, and brand crises also sit in this danger zone because their potential impact is so severe. These 5 areas are non-negotiable. They demand immediate and direct C-suite oversight. So, this entire analysis leads us not to a simple summary, but to a set of fundamental strategic questions. The answers to these questions will define the future trajectory and the resilience of any global automotive enterprise. Here's the first one. Is the primary objective to continue this breakneck pace of market share acquisition and simply accept compliance failures as a cost of doing business? Or is it time to deliberately slow the pace of expansion to build more robust, resilient systems first? This is the central strategic trade-off. Second, how do we actually define success? Should it continue to be measured almost exclusively by financial metrics like sales volume and revenue? Or does the definition itself need to expand to a more balanced scorecard that includes compliance ratings, brand health, and even local employee satisfaction? Because what gets measured gets managed. And finally, in a world of increasing geopolitical friction and diverging regulations, where does true resilience lie? Does it come from maintaining tight, centralized control from headquarters? Or does it come from building self-sufficient, autonomous regional hubs that have the power to adapt to local conditions? The answer to that question will define the operating model for the next decade.